There is an interesting museum in Hot Springs called the Gangster Museum of America. At one time, all famous gangsters of America, including Al Capone, Frank Costello, Nash, Madden, etc., used to live in Hot Springs. This museum sheds light on the lives and times of these gangsters. It's a small museum and at any time accommodates maximum 10 to 15 people. For a $15 entry, you are given a 1 hour guided tour through the 7 halls. You can see memorabilia, photographs, paintings, etc., arranged in these halls. There are short video films as well as narration by the tour guide. You can see the bootlegging equipment of Al Capone and his picture on the Time magazine cover. It is interesting how one dedicated governor took upon himself the task of cleaning up the city of prostitution, gambling, bootlegging, etc.
And if you want to see how much that was, look above it. About $10 to $15 for a single slot machine, on up to about $1,500 for a large casino. And paid monthly, that represented a huge sum of money to this city.
Much more powerful than the mafia, for Hot Springs would become the target of the American politician.
You refuse to testify further?
Absolutely. And to Mr. Alley, all due respect for the sandwich, I have an awful lot of respect for him. I'm not going to answer another question. He just says I'm not under arrest and I'm going to walk out.
The Genovese family would force Frank Costello into retirement, although he'd come to Hot Springs many more times. But new hotels and plush casinos were being built in Hot Springs, among them the Monte Carlo room, part of the former Vapors nightclub on Park Avenue just around the corner from the Gangster Museum of America. Ironically now, it's the Tower of Strength Ministries. In this room, you might see Frank Sinatra or Sam Giancana sitting in the audience watching the McGuire sisters, or Liberace or Phyllis Diller, or any number of stars that played here. Tony Bennett himself rehearsed for the first time I Left My Heart in San Francisco on this very stage. Meanwhile, Las Vegas and the New York mob watched anxiously as Nelson Rockefeller stood at the crossroads of his political career, and his brother, newly elected governor in Arkansas, stood in the crosshairs of American history, as pointed out by Bob Vernon, KARK Channel 4 some years ago when he did a piece called Casino, Arkansas.
Nightlife meant gambling in the 50s and 60s. It was nothing new to Hot Springs. It had been a prime industry of the town for over 100 years. With the gambling came other forms of vice, like prostitution. A quarter of a century ago, Maxine Harris Jones was the queen of the Hot Springs Madams. Her Cadillac convertible was a familiar sight here on Central Avenue.
And I wanted everybody to know I had some new girls, so I'd let the top back, and I'd drive down Central Avenue and let them sit up on the back. Well, back then everything was wide open. If it was illegal, it was still okay, you know what I mean? I'd drive them up down Central Avenue, advertise.
There's a wax museum here now, but in the 50s, the multimillionaire wanted to be governor, and he was allying himself with reform groups. A showdown was coming between the gamblers and the millionaire. The gamblers were flexing their muscles and demanding payoffs from the other rackets in Hot Springs. Money
was and whatever, and he was obviously had been asleep. And I told him that we were going to get search warrants for these clubs. And he said, well, I'll be down in the morning in my office about 9:30 sometime. Just wait for me down there. And so I said, well, whenever you want to come down, it's fine with me because we've got the clubs surrounded. I've got state troopers that have taken over downtown Hot Springs. And so whenever you get ready to come down, give me a call and put the ball in his part. And he said, I'll be down in 5 minutes.
Davis turned the slot machines over to the Hot Springs police to destroy. In just a few weeks, he says, the machines were back in the hands of the gamblers. In subsequent raids, Davis personally destroyed the machines.
We found 111 slot machines this morning.
morning,
And his reward for cleaning up the illegal gambling?
I was the only one that ever went to jail over this whole thing.
A grand jury wanted him to reveal the name of one of his informants.
And I told him that I wouldn't tell till hell froze over.
Within 2 days, Rockefeller's army of attorneys had Colonel Davis out.
They got it before the hearing before the Supreme Court the next day. And the Supreme Court threw the case out and freed me.
Davis called the gambling cleanup the end of an era, and it was.
This is what I promised that I would do, and I have confidence in the fact that Lynn Davis could do it.
Very seldom, I think, does a person have a chance to do something that changes history.
Now, you folks probably remember at the beginning of this tour, I explained.
Visitors came to this area for the water, the hot water, and many visitors came to get out of hot water. The politicians were more than happy to facilitate them. The rich, the famous, and the powerful all came. Guys like Capone, Mitty, Luciano, Anastasia, Costello, Carpus, Nash, Jim.
Of course, everyone knows by now that room 443 here at the Arlington Hotel was the room of Al Capone. In fact, he enjoyed renting the entire floor. One of the reasons Capone liked the fourth floor is because of its history. The history of boss gambler Frank Flynn trying to kill Major Duran, his gambling rival, right down here, right down Central Avenue. We're going to go from here down the hallway to what used to be the Hattery, famous hat store and other things, where we know Al Capone would cross the street without ever seeing the daylight. Follow me. Capone could leave his room 443 here at the Arlington and go down this hall, which in that day and time was an entrance to the Hattery, a fine hat store and a provider of hats and other extreme pleasures. Now, for security reasons, we can't tell you exactly how we're going to do it, but we're going underneath the city of Hot Springs, Central Avenue, where Hot Springs Creek still flows with many tales to be told. As you can probably tell, we're underneath Central Avenue in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Hot Springs Creek runs through here. Hot water, of course, warm water, boiling up, causing a lot of fog and a lot of problems with our cameras. Nevertheless, we're going to trudge on. As you might know, the legend has it that gangsters would come and go through doors of basements of businesses and clubs, such as a Southern Club and some of the hotels. Therefore, they can travel unseen throughout the city, basically an underground city. We're going to trudge on and see how far we can get. Hopefully, we'll get to the door that leads to the bowling alley, where private bowling lanes were provided by one of the clubs, I believe the Ohio Club, to allow the gangsters to have a little fun at night without being seen, because of course they were celebrities back in that day and time. Supposedly, according to our experts, there is a couple of huge manhole covers down there around in front of the Arlington Hotel that should be producing that light, so we're almost there. Once we get there, we think we can take a door that's barricaded up somewhat, but not from this side, and once we get in, then we'll see what we can find. Let's go. 55-gallon drum. Hopefully there's not a body in there. Well, it opens up. Could be a bowling alley, or could have been. Looks like there's been some pipes and maybe a brick wall added. Careful. Oh, man. Solid floor. Wood sounds like covered with concrete. Well, back to the creek. We're going out the way we came.
So, pretty neat, huh? Well, that will conclude our tour for the day. Y'all were a great audience, about as exciting as a box of turtles, but you were a great audience. Now, before you head out, be sure and check out our Happy Hollow display here. We do have it set up so you can get some photographs.
There was an interesting story about how Al Capone disguised his bootlegging business. He used to sell hot spring water in bottles and then whiskey in similar bottles, but the label was put upside down. So the buyers would know which one is hot spring water and which is the whiskey they want. That brought us to the end of the tour. In the hall, there were some pictures, including that of President Bill Clinton, who hails from the state of Arkansas. Those pictures don't belong in this museum anyway. We were happy to be back to the hot springs of today.